world, it's Keely and I'm back for another video. This is going to be my spring book haul part 2 / potential last book haul for the rest of the year. I have every intention of reading as many of these books as I possibly can by the end of the year, but also really trying to pull it back because I have a list of every book that I've purchased so far this year, both nonfiction and fiction, and just looking at the fiction books, it's 64, and if you include all the nonfiction, that puts it up into the 90s, which is too many. Just completely too many given the space that I have and given how many books I have that are unread. I did do a update. I have my book notebook here where I write everything down, and I did write down the other day, as soon as I find it, where I'm at in terms of read to unread. As of the 28th of May, I keep wanting to say February. It's not February, we're in May. As of the 28th of May, I own 705 books, but I've read 421 of them, and that leaves 284 unread, which is not terrible, but that's more than what I started with at the beginning of the year, and that's not the goal. The goal is to have more books read and just like constantly getting the books that are on my shelves read. Also, I have very limited shelf space, and I am 100% out of shelf space. I have 2 big bookcases that are over there completely full, and I have a bookcase behind me, which when the books that I have finished reading and then some of the books I'm currently reading, when those go back on those shelves, completely full. I have a book cart over here that could be completely full if I put some of these books that you're about to see on the cart, but that still leaves a couple piles with no place to go. I need to continue to work through my books and find ones that I either read and enjoyed but won't read again, or don't like and are DNFing to get rid of to make more space for the new books, because I can't get another bookshelf. I could certainly rearrange this office and get another bookshelf. I don't want to do that because it already can start to feel really cluttered in my office because I'm a knick-knack person. I like things to feel very lived in, very cozy. And when my office is organized and clean, it's very cozy. I love my office. But as of right now, I just have so many books everywhere. Book piles are really what my clutter ends up being, and I don't love that for me. I want to be able to have open space again in my office. All of that to say, I have a big ass book haul for you guys. Some of these books you will have seen for my June TBR. Some of them I've already read, so I can talk to you about those. And then some of them are for a summer reading project that I still need to film that video. And I think I'm just going to haul them here and then make them part of the summer reading video as I go along throughout the summer, doing vlogs for that. I think that's enough stalling. Let's just get into this video. Last time I did a book haul, which was like a couple weeks ago, I decided that I wanted to share some of my favorites of like the month at the beginning, or things I'm just enjoying, and so I wrote them down again of like the new things that I'm enjoying. So my favorite show right now has been The Good Place, which is Kristen Bell and Ted Danson. I think we're watching it on Netflix, and it's a comedy show that's really dark at times because Kristen Bell dies and she wakes up and Ted Danson's like, "Welcome to the good place, you're dead." But then she realizes that her character is there by mistake and should actually be in the bad place. And so then there's shenanigans. It's very cozy at times, very funny, really hard-hitting topics in that show, but we're just really loving it. So that's what I'm watching. In terms of YouTubers, I have been obsessed with Jen Campbell's videos right now. I have been going back and rewatching her vlogs from the years, and she is an author and a booktuber. She is a poetry writer. She writes kids books, she writes adult books, and she's a disability advocate because she has a few disabilities, and just a wonderful person. And so her videos are just very, very comforting and perfect for all year round, but really perfect for spring for me right now. I have been absolutely loving her. And then I have a pile of books here inspired by booktubers that I've been watching, so we'll go through those. My favorite things to do right now are just be in nature, hiking, riding our bikes on trails, reading outside. Absolutely love being surrounded by plants. It's been wonderful. And then my favorite thing of the moment is the library, because I have been getting so many books from the library, primarily as ebooks, but also I have a physical stack here to show you guys. So really just loving using my library this year, and just wanted to highlight that. Use your public libraries if you have one. And some libraries don't require you to have a local address for you to get a library card, so definitely look into that. There are, I think the Philadelphia County Library is that way, and also I think there's a library in California where you don't need to have a local address in order to get a book, a library card, which is wonderful. All right, that's enough. You guys are here for the book, so let's just get started. We're going to start with all of the books that I have already read. So the first one, we have a short story collection. This is Terry Pratchett's A Stroke of the Pen, The Lost Stories. This one is actually a collection of stories that his editor, and I don't remember who else, but his editor ended up doing some research and realizing that Terry Pratchett had published a bunch of short stories under pen names in newspapers, and they were never collected before in a compilation. And there's like an introduction at the beginning of this book talking about how they realized that there were all of these stories out there that were under different pen names, but were Terry Pratchett's work. And so they did a whole bunch of research and they collected them into this book, and it was incredibly cozy. It was 100% Terry Pratchett, which he was just a very, very cozy author. He wrote the Discworld series and a ton of other books. I've read a handful of the Discworld books, and they're all absolutely wonderful. Really, really enjoyed them. Tons of fairies and mythical creatures, just super quirky. Really, really loved this one. Then we have a nonfiction. This one is The Book of English Magic by Philip Carr-Gomm and Richard Heygate. This one, it's massive. This one I never planned to sit down and read front to back. This one I definitely wanted as like a reference book on my shelves. In my brain, in the future, when we have more space, I will have multiple shelves, and each like shelf will have sections based on the type of book, and this will go onto my nonfiction witchy spooky occult books, because I have a lot of them, but they're all spread out all over my shelves, and this one I just really wanted to add to that collection. So I've read all of the sections in this one that I'm interested in right now, but it's one that I will pick up off and on throughout the years. And this is just a nonfiction looking at the use of magic in England throughout the centuries and the various people that have made it their life's work to study magic. They reference Aleister Crowley a bunch, which he's always a fascinating one to read about. And then up until today, where there are different bookstores in England that are specifically for like occult or witches or that kind of stuff. I love reading about this kind of stuff. I find it so fascinating from the perspective of what people will cling to in order to explain and understand their experience in the world. And I'm actually reading a book on the history of seances right now. It's like my second or third book on that topic because I find them so fascinating. But just the way that, you know, you can track it by after like a world war or a huge conflict or some kind of shenanigans where there's a lot of trauma, sales of Ouija boards will go through the roof because people are trying to come to terms with what happened and deal with the ambiguous loss of not really knowing what happened to their loved ones. And so people really go into spiritualism and the occult, and I just find that super duper fascinating. So that's a long-winded reason for why I got this one, and I'm considering it read because I've read the sections that I want to read right now. Then we have a middle grade. This one is Where the Mountain Meets the Moon by Grace Lynn. I thought that this was the start of a series. It's not actually a series. She has written a few other books, and the next one, I think after this one, also won awards, so I definitely want to read that one as well. They are middle grade books inspired by Chinese mythology, and this one was incredibly cozy. I really, really loved it. So you're following Min Lee, who is a young girl that lives with her parents in a valley, and it is incredibly impoverished, and they're just really struggling. And Min Lee is trying to stay positive. She's like, you know, I can still enjoy my life. And her dad tells her a bunch of stories all the time, and her mom is very negative all the time and very unhappy. And one day, Min Lee asks her dad to tell her the story again of the old man in the moon, and decides after hearing the story again that she wants to go find him and ask him a question that can change her family's fortune. And so the bulk of the story is following Min Lee after she has left her family home to go find the old man in the moon. And it was so lovely, so cozy. There's like very little actual conflict in this book. Everything kind of works out. Like, she encounters one person and he's so nice to her, and I'm like, I was so confused in the moment, like, why is he nice to her? Like, that's not how books work. And then I was like, no, that's how this works. This is just a cozy middle grade. So definitely really, really loved this one. Then we have this one, which is The Forest Brims Over by Maru Ayase, translated from the Japanese by Hayden Trowell. The cover of this one is honestly what drew me to it, because it felt very spring-like. This one was weird. So I think this one has magical realism. I think that's what it was, where as I'm reading it, I get really confused and it makes me uncomfortable, and I end up feeling dumb when I read magical realism because I don't fully understand what's happening. And that's just like the experience of magical realism, is like, you're not supposed to completely understand what's happening, but I struggle with it, but I'm really trying to embrace it and just enjoy it. But this one was really weird. I enjoyed it though. So this one is about an author who writes his stories inspired by his wife. And it's 100% obvious that he's writing about his wife. And he writes about their sex lives, and it's very, very graphic and very invasive. And basically her sense of self is taken from her and used as a platform for his success. And she just gets tired of that. So one day she just eats a bunch of seeds and starts sprouting plants off of her body. And that's kind of what you deal with for the rest of the book. You're talking like through the lens of the author's editors and the different people that know them and their experience of realizing that something is going on in this house, and like, why are there trees sprouting out of the house? And it was very, very strange, but I love that idea of the wife taking back control of her body by deciding to become a garden, basically. I don't know. It was wild. I really enjoyed it. And I believe this is the first book from this author translated into English. So I hope that they continue to translate more of this author's work, because I really enjoyed it. And then the final one that I've already read is this one, which is another short story collection. This is The Ladies of Grace, Adieu, and Other Stories by Susanna Clarke. Susanna Clarke wrote Piranesi, which was really popular a couple years ago. She wrote Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. That is that massive, massive historical fiction with magic. And I have now completed all of Susanna Clarke's traditionally published works, which bums me out because I love her books so, so much, but I believe she hasn't put out any in the last couple of years other than Piranesi. I don't know if there are any plans for her to publish another book. This one is a collection of like fairy inspired short stories. One of them includes Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, and they were just so lovely. I really, really enjoyed this collection. Now we can get into the library books. You'll find the next two piles, one library books and one books that I now own, are heavily inspired by Jen Campbell. So let's just move through these. So as Jen talks about her favorite authors or authors she's read all of their work, I have now an app on my phone, or a note on my phone, where I'm keeping track of those authors, and I want to try their works and see if I also get along with them. So the first one we have is The Fell by Sarah Moss, who has written a bunch of stuff that like BookTube really, really enjoys. This one was the one that my library had. It's also very, very short, and this one takes place It says, at dusk on a November evening, a woman slips through her garden gate and turns up the hill. Kate is in the middle of a 2-week mandatory quarantine period, a true lockdown, but she can't take it anymore, so she decides to go outside. She only planned a quick walk, but somehow she falls. Injured, unable to move, she sees that her short, furtive stroll will become a mountain rescue operation, maybe even a missing person case. That just sounds intense and stressful, but it's very short, and I've heard wonderful things about this one, so I'm very intrigued. Then an author that I have never read anything from, but she's become kind of like a booktube girly darling, I think probably more book talk, is Atessa Moshfegh. This one is Death in Her Hands. This is the one that Jen talked about the most in terms of really enjoying her work. Obviously she has a bunch of other books, the Labvona, My Year of Rest and Relaxation, Eileen, some other ones, but this is the one that my library had and the one that I decided that I would start with. So this one is, again, a woman on her daily walk with her dog in the woods. Right. Okay, so this is the one where she comes across a handwritten note that is stuck to the ground, and the note says, her name was Magda. No one will ever know who killed her. It wasn't me, but here is her dead body. And then the main character becomes obsessed with figuring out who killed Magda and who left the note. And I know there have been a couple books written about like that kind of theme of like finding a note on a body or near a body recently, but this is the one that I am most excited to start with. This one was not inspired by anyone. I've never heard anyone talk about this, but I am loving short stories right now, so I decided to grab this one. This one is The Artist of Disappearance by Anita Desai. So this is a collection of, I believe, only 3 novellas that take place in modern day India. And the one that really drew me into this one is, as the final story is of Ravi living hermit-like in the burnt-out shell of his family home high in the Himalayan mountains. He cultivates not only silence and solitude, but a secret hidden away in the woods, concealed from sight. But a film crew intrudes upon his seclusion, and it compels him to withdraw even further until he magically and elusively disappears. That just sounds really, really fascinating, so that's just why I decided to pick this one up. Then I grabbed another Emma Donoghue. So a couple of years ago, I read The Wonder, and I enjoyed the majority of that book, but the final twist at the end is just not my favorite. I don't love when authors or TV shows or movies use that particular twist. So if you read that book, you probably know what I'm talking about. I just did not enjoy that, so that kind of took it like dropped it down for me in terms of my enjoyment. I have never read any other of Emma Donoghue's works, but Lauren from Lauren and the Books, who I also watch a lot of, has read, I think, all of her books, and Room and The Pool of the Stars are 2 of her favorites, so I decided to grab The Pool of Her Stars. This one takes place in Ireland, and it says it's doubly ravaged by war and disease. Nurse Julia Power works at an understaffed hospital in the city center where expectant mothers who have come down with a terrible new flu are quarantined together. Into Julia's regimented world step 2 outsiders, Dr. Kathleen Lynn, a rumored rebel on the run from the police, and a young volunteer helper named Bridie Sweeney. In the darkness and intensity of this tiny ward over 3 days, these women change one another's lives in unexpected ways. They lose patience to this baffling pandemic, but they also shepherd new life into a fearful world. With tireless tenderness and humanity, carers and mothers alike somehow do their impossible work. I don't know, that's not typically something that I would pick up on my own, but because Lauren really enjoyed it, I decided that I would give it a shot. Then another author on that list of authors to read from is Jeanette Winterson, and I thought this one would be fun to start with. This one is Nightside of the River, Ghost Stories. And like I said earlier, I am now reading a book about the history of seances, and I started that last night before bed, and that's going to be my before bed book where I read like a chapter a day. I want to throw in some ghost stories with that. I thought that that would be super fun to do. I love reading spooky things right before bed, or one of my other favorite things to do is when I'm traveling by myself. So typically, like if I'm going on a work trip or something, I find a horror movie to watch by myself. I don't know why I do that, because then I'm just so anxious the entire night, but I do it every time. So I decided, why not pick this one up. Then we have one that's been going around very recently, and I decided to grab it because it's not that long. This one is The Coin by Yasmin Zahir. This one is about a Palestinian woman who becomes kind of involved in counterfeit purses. Something like that. Yeah. She becomes involved with selling counterfeit Birkin bags, and I've heard very mixed things about this one, but I decided that I wanted to give it a go. I'm trying to read more literature, I guess, instead of just middle grade fantasy. But fantasy and middle grade are my favorite things ever. So I'm trying to like expand my horizons and pick up books that I typically wouldn't necessarily pick up. So that's why I decided to grab this one. And then the final book from the library that I have is Ali Smith's new book, which is, again, another author that is like a YouTube darling that I really want to read from. This was the only book by her that my library had, and this is Glyph. And this one kind of sounds like a middle grade, but it's about 2 children and a horse. And it's supposed to be a kind of transformative, looking for meaning and understanding the world kind of story, I guess. I don't know. I just wanted to read something from Ali Smith because people absolutely love her and I haven't read anything. So I decided I'll just start with this one because this was the one that was available. Okay, now we can move into the next section of books, which are all books inspired specifically by YouTubers. So the first one that we have here is Claire LeGrand's book, A Crown of Ivy and Glass. This is the Middle Mist Trilogy, book 1. This is a, I think, young adult fantasy, and this is the start of a series, well, a trilogy, because it said trilogy. Whitney from Witty Novels absolutely loves Claire LeGrand, and I haven't read any of her work, but now I have 2 of her books, because I also have a middle grade on my shelf that she wrote called Thornlight, and I just really wanted to try a big chunky fantasy that someone, you know, really enjoyed. That's kind of it. That's why I decided to pick this one up. So I'm hoping that I will enjoy this one. Then I have been watching a lot of CJ's videos. So she has a bookstore. I think she lives in Arizona, and it's Sunny's Bookshop, and her videos are just, again, very comforting, very cozy. Being a bookseller, she gets a ton of books and reads kind of a wide range. And so one of her favorite authors that she talked about was Jonathan Franzen, and I have never read any of his books. So when I was at the bookstore, I looked through the Jonathan Franzen section to find which one I wanted to start with. And it seems like he writes a lot of kind of like political, not necessarily family stories, but just not typically things that I would reach for, but this was the one that sounded like the most fascinating to me. So this one is Strong Motion, and this one talks about Lewis, who goes to Boston after his grandmother dies, or no, he goes to Boston, and while he's there, an earthquake hits, and it's like a series of earthquakes, and the first one kills his grandmother. Then their family gets like embroiled in an inheritance feud, which I wouldn't typically read about. Like, that stresses me out. I don't want to read that. But it says he falls in love with a seismologist named Renee, who is trying to figure out what's causing the earthquakes and has a theory of them that is apparently very upsetting. So I don't really know. It just felt enough like sci-fi vibes that I would potentially enjoy this one. So I'm excited to give it a try. Then we have a Margaret Atwood. This one is Stone Mattress. This one is a collection of short stories. When I was watching all of Jen's videos, she talked a lot about Margaret Atwood and how she's read basically all of her work. And I realized that I've only read 2 Margaret Atwood. I read The Handmaid's Tale, because everyone has, and I read the Penelope ad, but I haven't read anything else. And she apparently is a big old weirdo, or was. I don't remember if she's still alive, but I decided that I wanted to read some of her short stories. So I'm very intrigued by this one, but I'm also very worried because in one of the stories, it's about a young woman, and it says monstrously transformed by a genetic defect and then gets mistaken for a vampire. I don't love that language around a potential disability or bodily difference, so we shall see. But I want to just give Margaret Atwood a chance and like read some of her other work. One that came incredibly highly recommended from both Jen and Lauren is this one. This one is Pet by Catherine Chidgey. And this one is about a girl who becomes obsessed with her teacher and wants to be the teacher's pet. And I think it's a thriller, and like I said, both Lauren and Jen really loved this one, and I don't read a ton of thrillers, but I decided I would give this one a chance because it comes so highly recommended. Then one of Lauren's favorite authors is Daphne du Maurier, and I've only read one story from her, which was Rebecca, which is the one that everyone's read. And listening to Lauren talk about Rebecca and her reread of it, it made me want to reread it. But the copy that I have is somewhere buried on my shelves. It's a mass market paperback. It's very, very old. That's when I initially read it, like how I read the story. And I want to do a reread now that I'm a couple years older, but I didn't want to reread it from that version. So I just went to the store and picked up the one that they had, which was this version. If you haven't heard of this book or know what it's about, Rebecca is a gothic story about a woman that befriends a man, and I think they start dating, and they go back to his house. It takes a place like a lot in his mansion or his manor, and there's some mystery around Rebecca, his ex-wife or previous wife or something like that. And I remember what the twist is, but I don't remember like all of the build-up or the vibes, so that's why I decided to get this one to do a reread. Now, I don't have many of my videos posted on my channel anymore. I've been on BookTube since 2014. I have hundreds of videos filmed, but the majority of them are now privated. I've thought about unprivating some of them, but I don't know. But anyway, if you had been here like historically, you know that I don't really reread books ever, but I want to do a reread of this one, which is asking a lot of me because it's a big old chonker, but I'm determined. I really want to reread this one. Then one that was actually recommended to me a couple years ago by a friend, and it's been on my like library wish list. I think I had it checked out from the library at one point and I didn't read it, but it came up into my brain again because I'm reading a lot of short story collections. Sorry, I can't get comfortable. I'm reading a lot of short story collections, and also Jen talked a lot about this author and has read a bunch of her work, so I decided to grab it and give it a chance this time. This one is White Cat, Black Dog by Kelly Link, which is a collection of short stories that are like very magical or have like magic in them. A friend of mine that has recommended me a couple books over the years that I own but haven't read any of them recommended this one to me, and because it comes with high praise from Jen that she's read all of her work, I was like, okay, I'll give this one a chance. So that's why I picked up this one. Then a BookTube like favorite from 2014. This one is The Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland in a Ship of Her Own Making by Catherine Valente. This one is at the start of a middle grade series that I think is completed at this point. And Jen talked about the first couple books in this series being like some of her favorites, but not really getting on with the other books. And so I decided that I would finally give this one a go. I'm reading a ton of middle grade right now. I just want all of the cozy stuff. So I thought that this one could be fun to finally read. More books that I bought because of Jen, and then we'll move on to everything else. So we have The Magic Toy Shop by Angela Carter. Angela Carter was an author that wrote a ton of like fairy tale retellings and like weird stuff, and I have just never read any of her work, and this was the only one that my bookstore had, so I decided that I would start with this one. It's pretty short. I've heard very high praise for this one. Jen has read, I think, all of her work at this point, and also within the last few years, a biography of Angela Carter came out that was also very, very good, so I decided that I would pick this one up. In my head, again, for these future shelves, her work will go on the shelves with all of Shirley Jackson, because in my head they're two weirdos, and so I want their books to all be together and then have their biographies side by side, because I have at least one Shirley Jackson biography, so I thought that would be fun. One I really want to pick up, but I'm trying to not start any of my June books until I finish my May books, or at least the ones I'm currently reading, is In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. This one is a memoir. This is the one that people really, really love from this author. I have read their short story collection, Her Body and Other Parties, and I did enjoy that one. But I've heard that of the two, this one is like definitely the book to read. So this one's been on my list for a long time. But then again, watching Jen, she referenced this book a few times and said how amazing it was. So I decided that I wanted to actually finally pick this one up. And it's all about, like, each chapter or page is just dream house as not a metaphor, dream house as inventory, dream house as the first Thanksgiving. So it's a memoir told very differently, and I'm just very much intrigued by it, and I really want to read it. Did you just see Zoe, my very sleepy chihuahua? There she is. She's gonna be 9 this summer, so she's just a sleepy cozy girl. All right, let's get into all of the other books that I bought. I've got so many more piles, guys. This is such a long one. We have a couple romances. So we have Homegrown Magic by Jamie Pacton and Rebecca Potos. And this one is a romance about a woman that owns a greenhouse. And I just thought it would be super fun to read over spring and summer, maybe even into fall. But I just thought this one would be funsies and cute and cozy. And that's why I grabbed this one. Then, if you remember from my previous videos and haul, my sister and I are buddy reading a couple books, and one of them was the Golden Girls murder mystery that came out this year. And then I also decided to get us both a copy of this one, which is Under Lock and Key by Lana Ferguson, which is a romance that takes place in Scotland and references the Loch Ness Monster. We both have both of these books. I read Golden Girls, my sister read this one, and so now we're swapping. She's going to read Golden Girls and I'm going to read this one, and then we're going to meet up, probably get Mexican food, and talk about the books. So I'm very excited to get to this one. Then we have one that is incredibly popular right now, so I'm a little bit worried that that means that it's hyped but won't be as good as people are saying, but we'll see. This one is Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. I got this one at the airport when we were going to Florida, and it's got super cute sprayed edges, and I bought, it's in another book right now, but I bought a kind of like holographic bookmark that also has an octopus on it, because this book is about an octopus. And so I was like, oh, I'll read this book in Florida with my octopus bookmark and it'll be so cool. And yeah, I didn't pick this one up, so I need to read this one. This one is about a woman who, after her husband dies, she becomes obsessed with an octopus at an aquarium, and something about like maybe her son disappeared or something. I don't know. There's an octopus in it, and there's been a couple books written over the years where people develop relationships with them, and I just think that's so fun. So that's why I picked up this one. And then we have a short story collection. Like I said, I've been reading a ton of them right now, and now I have a stack of them on my shelves I need to read. This one is Wednesday's Child by Yi-Yun Lee. I have not read anything from this author, but this one sounds so fascinating. So listen to the description of one of the stories. A grieving mother makes a spreadsheet of everyone that she's lost. Yes, I absolutely want to read that. One I am so excited for to read very, very soon. Like, I want to pick it up today, but I keep picking up other books. This one is The Garden Against Time in Search of a Common Paradise by Olivia Lang. I've never read anything from this author, but this is a nonfiction about her experience with restoring an 18th century walled garden in England. And again, I'm just obsessed with being outside and in nature right now, and we just went to botanical gardens on Monday, and I just, oh, this sounds like it's gonna be so cozy and so fascinating. So I'm very, very intrigued by this. I would love to have a greenhouse. I would love to have a garden. I did have my own garden a couple years ago, but we live in an apartment complex. We have a townhouse, and the apartment manager a couple years ago decided to change their policies, and so they kind of standardized everyone's garden, so now you're not allowed to plant other things. And that bums me out, because as beautiful as it is, we have like rose plants and some other green crap. As beautiful as that is and as cozy as it is, I wish that we could have like wildflowers and shit, but that's okay. Then we have a stack of middle grade. So we have Heidi by Johana Spyri. This is one that has been around for a very, very long time, and it's about a little girl who loses her parents and has to go live with her grandfather that she's never met before. And I did start reading this one. Oh, is that the bookmark? This is the bookmark. Yeah, okay, so here's the octopus bookmark. Oh. So I'm up to chapter 4, and I am enjoying it so far. This one was one that I purposefully bought to read in the spring. I suck at buying books for specific projects and then never reading them. So I'm trying really, really hard to read the books that I specifically bought for like whatever purpose, so that they don't just get stuck on my shelves. And that's why I decided to pick up this one. Then when I was at the bookstore, I was at Barnes & Noble, and they said, oh, you have one book that's buy one, get one 50%, but you don't have another book that qualifies for that. Do you want to have this one? And so I was like, Okay. So this is the new Anna James. This is Chronicles of Weatherwhy, The Age of Enchantment. This one is all over Barnes & Noble right now, which again, similar to Remarkably Bright Creatures, makes me worried that it's not as good because they're hyping it so much. So we shall see. But this is a middle grade about dragons and fantasy and magic and stuff. And that typically would absolutely be something that I enjoy, but we'll see. We'll see if I enjoy this one. Then we have the last three middle grade are continuation of series. So this is Greenwild, The City Beyond the Sea by Perry Thomson. I literally just finished Greenwild, book 1, like last week, and I freaking loved it. So these are middle grades about plant magic, and the main character's mother goes missing in the Amazon, and then she has to figure out who she could trust and what's going on and how to harness her plant magic and what that means for her. And it was so cozy, so wonderful, and I immediately wanted to go get the second book so I could read it and be caught up. I don't know if it's just a duology or if there will be other books, but I really, really want to get to this one soon. Then we have the final two Enola Holmes books that have been published. I don't know if she's planning on writing any more, but this one is Enola Holmes and the Elegant Escapade, and then Enola Holmes and the Mark of the Mongoose by Nancy Springer. These are books 8 and 9. I have read the first 7 books. They are super duper fast reads. They're middle grade about Enola, who is Sherlock and Mycroft's younger sister. And in the first couple of books, she's really just establishing herself as her own version of a detective, trying to figure out how to live in a world where her mother is, I think, dead at this point or missing. Or Sherlock and Mycroft come into her life and they try to exert their influence over her and control her, and she's very much like, nopees, I'm not doing that. And they're wonderful. They're so cozy. I had such a good time reading book 7, so I wanted to get books 8 and 9 so that I have them all and then completely caught up. My editions don't match at all. Like, now I have a paperback, I have this hardback. Book 7 matches this hardback, but books 1 through 6 before Enola Holmes the movie came out were in completely different editions, so they match each other, but now they don't match these. Whatever. I would love if they would republish these to match the originals, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. So for now, we just have these. All right, y'all, we're getting close to the end. The final selection of books that I have is a stack of books for my summer reading project. And I'm not going to tell you what that reading project is, but you're going to figure it out real quick. First book that we have is Frankenstein in Baghdad by Ahmed Sadawi. This one is a retelling, obviously, but this one takes place during a war in Iraq. And I've heard incredible things about this one, and it's been on my shelf. Well, it's been on my wish list for a very long time, so I finally got a copy. Then we have Poor Things by Alistair Gray. I don't love movie tie-in covers, but this was the only one they had. And this one takes place in the 1880s in Scotland, and a medical student becomes obsessed with a creature called Bella that was created by a scientist. And so this is, again, a Frankenstein retelling. Then we have My Imaginary Mary by Cynthia Hand, Brodie Ashton, and Jody Meadows. This is part of a series, but I don't remember. Oh, it's the Lady Janie's series, but this one is a retelling of Mary Shelley and her life. Then we have The Mary Shelley Club by Goldie Moldavsky, and this one is a thriller that is inspired by Mary Shelley and her life and writing Frankenstein. And did I say this is young adult? This is young adult. Then we have Death and the Sisters by Heather Redmond. This is a Mary Shelley mystery, the first book. I don't know how many there are, but again, inspired by Mary Shelley. Then we have Her Lost Words by Stephanie Marie Thornton. This is a novel of Mary Wollstonecraft and Mary Shelley. Then we have Mary and the Birth of Frankenstein by Anne Eckhout. So this is again a novelization of Mary Shelley. Then we have M is for Monsters by Talia Dutton. This one is a graphic novel inspired by Frankenstein. We have Angelica Frankenstein Makes Her Match by Sally Thorne. This is a romance inspired by Frankenstein. And we have Mortal Remains by Mary Ann Fraser. This is a Frankenstein retelling. We have The Monster's Monster by Patrick McDonnell, which is a kid's book about monsters and Frankenstein. And then we have Big People, Little Dreams, Mary Shelley, written by, it says M with like a little A. Isabel Sanchez Vergara, and illustrated by Yelena Brixkinkova. And this is a book about Mary Shelley. So, have you figured out what my summer reading project is? I don't know how you figured it out. Those are all the books, guys. That's literally everything. Nope, that's a freaking lie. Okay, so 2 more books are coming in the mail today. Oh my god. Okay, these are the final books. There's one more book coming out this summer that I absolutely want to pre-order and get a copy of, and that is Jen Campbell's new collection. She and I believe 20 other or like 19 other disabled authors wrote essays for this collection called Owning It, which is a book that they would have wanted to have when they were kids growing up with disabilities. And it just sounds absolutely incredible. And I want to make sure that my local bookstore, my indie bookstore, pre-orders it. And so they see that this is a book that exists, and hopefully they will buy copies for other people to purchase and read. So that one comes out in the United States in August, I believe. But the 2 books coming today, influenced very much by Jen Campbell and Lauren. So the first book is the Light Years, which is the first book in the Cazalet Chronicles by Elizabeth Jane Howard. Very much inspired by Lauren because she read all of these books within the last year or so and absolutely loved them. And it's like a huge family saga that's historical. Again, not something I would typically pick up on my own, but Lauren loved it so much that I decided that I would give it a shot, so I bought the first one. And then the second book is called, I think it's called Moving Mountains, and this one is a collection of nature writing from disabled authors. And again, being in nature, I very much recognize the privilege that I have to not only have access to safe locations that are nature, but also to be able to enjoy them and walk around them with no issues. And definitely something that I've noticed over the years with hiking is that as much as, you know, communities can try to make nature safe for everyone, we're just sucking at it. And so it's just something that I wanted to read more about. So that's why I bought that one. All right, that's it. I promise. That's everything. Like I said, I'm going to try to read all of these books, or as many as I can, before I start buying anything else. But let me know if you've read any of these books. Did you enjoy them? Are there any that I should bump up to the top of my list first? And that's it. Thanks for watching. Bye.